Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your man, Will Garner, and I am here for a super exciting episode that I'm so happy to be doing with my cousin, who is a political strategist, and she's worked with some of the greatest minds in the country and just came off a campaign with Kamala Harris, and she's done work with everybody from Elizabeth Warren to Hillary Clinton. You know, it's been on BET, you know, MTV, you name it, all of the cool stuff. And so we're just gonna dive right in. I'm gonna give her the opportunity to tell you guys everything she does and is currently doing. We're gonna talk some real heavy hitting stuff because this information is important for you, especially all you entrepreneurs out there who wanna know how this Trump administration is going to impact you. So y'all stay tuned. It's about to get rocking and rolling here.
Absolutely.
So help me welcome my cousin, Brentia Berry.
Thank you, Will.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So let's hop right in. Let's just talk about your journey and how you got to where you are now.
Well, you know, I guess, so I've watched a couple of interviews from some Black women lately who have been like, I'm not about to be humble. I typically would say all the pieces just fell in line, which is true. I was, you know, just in the right place at the right time when it came to different opportunities. But I also was really good at what I did, and I worked really hard at everything from, you know, working in local government all the way to doing production for some of the people that you just mentioned, whether it was, you know, Secretary Clinton or Elizabeth Warren, and all of the different principals and people that we had the opportunity to work with. But really how I got my start and what gave me that hustle was starting working in local government for a city councilor and also for the city of Austin when I was in college, and having to serve my constituents, because it wasn't, you know, the national level it's the national level, but for me, I started out having to respond if my constituents if their potholes, you know, the streets were not good, the seniors' roofs were falling in, public safety, all of that. So very granular, and thinking about how what we do in politics and in government impacts people,
so
everyday
basically,
people.
What you're saying is people listen. So what the constituents are saying just doesn't fall on deaf ears.
Good people who are good at their jobs listen.
Okay, fair enough.
People who are good at their jobs listen. But that's honestly where we are in this country right now, because a lot of people are tired of politics as usual, at least where we are right now. And so for however long, you know, I worked for the Democratic Party, and we were the party of the people. We were the party for the people. We, you know, we care about working people, and we're here to serve. I don't think that people feel that way. I think that is why we lost
the race.
This past election, because people, if you as an elected official are not focused on constituent services and serving the people, then people feel like you don't care about them. If they don't see you, they don't hear you. If you're not listening to them, if they don't feel heard, then the likelihood that somebody's going to get up off their couch to go vote is when you, especially when people are working 2 and 3 jobs right now. It's a tough playing field, and we have to make people feel like we care about them, and I mean, we have to care. And so yes, if you have a good elected official, you should be able to call their office, and their chief of staff or their staff assistant should get back to you and should help you with what you need.
Right.
That's not necessarily happening right now, unfortunately, and it should be. Not for everybody. There's some good people still out there, but we have to hold our politicians accountable. It doesn't matter what party you're in.
And I felt like Kamala Harris was like probably an ideal candidate for the political office, but there were so many people who had uncertainties about where their money was going or where the money was coming in at. And so even from an entrepreneur standpoint, I talked to so many people who were like, well, I need to start looking at doing my own thing because they were worried about their job situation, this and that. And so when you start talking about politics, I think that's where a candidate really has to address how it affects each individual family financially, because people want to know how they're going to feed their kids at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. It gets really hard. I mean, what we see happening right now is what the campaign was attempting to communicate. But, part of our jobs is to not just communicate it, but to make sure that people feel inspired to act, which is to go vote. And, we had a letter of 200 economists saying that Trump's tariff plan is going to significantly raise prices. Like if we think if the cost of eggs was high in October of 2024, all of these economists wrote this very beautiful letter, right? All over the world. But that's economists, right? And a letter. The ways in which we get that message out is the most important, because we have social media, we have all of these things, and if we're not talking about it on the places where the people are, then we're not really reaching the people that we need to reach. And because I used to be on the ground, I traveled all over all the time, and I was always talking to people from certain communities, especially marginalized communities, or people just like from various constituencies, whether it's Black, Latino, Native, women, youth. I heard from people. I heard from a producer that was from a neighborhood in Atlanta, and he was like, the Trump people have been in my neighborhood. I've not seen any Democrats knocking on any doors in my neighborhood. And I was like, and he said, I'm getting stuff on social media from them. I'm not seeing anything. And so, that's the type of thing that we have to pay attention to and be scrappy about, and, explain and make clear to people. Like, it's not just sending out a letter from economists. It's saying, hey, tariffs.
I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here to address these situations that are coming on.
Yeah.
Do you think it's more important to align with a candidate from their political party, or is it more important just for constituents to truly buckle down and listen to what this person is saying? And I know that may seem like a very obvious answer, but I feel like that whole concept went over a lot of people's heads.
Well, so I think the most important thing is to pay attention to what people are doing. That's part of the problem and the challenge is that, running a campaign is to say a certain thing to get elected. If you don't do that, there's polls, we put so much time and effort into that. It has to be a combination of what has this person done already?
Yeah.
And that to me is the most important. Now, when you start getting into national politics, it can be a little challenging because typically, there's a lot of people who run for president for the first time, like Vice President Harris. But, it wasn't her first time running for president, but it was her first time being the nominee because she was the first Black woman to ever become a nominee in the history of the country. But she definitely had the track record. What she had done, even as the top, attorney general in California, what she did as a senator, what she focused on as the vice president, that showed who she was. And I know there was a combination of things that happened, but sometimes it's just about people really feeling like you're being authentic as well. And one thing that I guess from what I have heard is people feel like President Trump he shows up as he is. I mean, he told us that he was going to be a fascist from day one, and that, you know, they were going to get rid of a lot of the government services, Medicare, Medicaid. We all talked about this, but I don't know.
People didn't listen.
I guess people didn't listen, or maybe people didn't think. I think there's always this aspect of it won't happen to me, or like maybe not that understanding of that. If Medicaid is cut, children won't have access to health care in my state. I mean, especially in states like Texas, it's already, Medicaid is already on a pretty low budget, but the rest of the country now, I mean, in Medicare, our seniors, like, we have to just pay attention to that type of stuff. And even if it doesn't impact us personally, it will impact us in some other way, you know? And I think that's part of it too, is the individualism of like, okay, well, if my taxes are, if I'm in the top, whatever, and my taxes are lower, I'm not gonna be impacted, you know, by the rest of the stuff. But it's like, oh yes, no, tariffs will impact you, and you're gonna get impacted if people don't have access to healthcare and some of the basic government services that they've been getting. It's gonna impact everybody.
Yeah, I feel like what the Trump campaign did was they truly dug deep into what was gonna swing people emotionally. That's how they had that overwhelming, you know, amount of people who just came out to the polls. So there was a really, really high level of intelligence that went into how they worked the emotions. Maybe they said, I mean, some of the stuff that was said was just went over other people's head. Like when you're talking about Medicare and Medicaid, maybe people didn't have that on their highest pecking level of stuff that was interesting to them, more so just about what he was going to do for their bottom line. That's kind of what my thoughts have been from this whole election.
Well,
and now people looking back like, oh, okay, we didn't know this and this was going to go up. We didn't know tariffs were going to skyrocket. We didn't know we were going to have to start looking at buying chickens to supplement our eggs, right?
Oh my gosh, I remember in January, it wasn't January, I went to the store and there were no eggs. And I was, you know, that was one of the biggest things that we heard from people, you know, in polls and all of that stuff was like, well, the cost of eggs is so high. I'm not happy with this current administration. And I'm like, you know, in January, I was like, well, now I can't get eggs. There's no eggs to even buy.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So do you feel like,
on your question about intelligent, the way they ran the campaign, I would not, I think intelligent is a strong word. I think intelligent is strong. I think they were scrappier.
Okay.
I think they were scrappier, and they were willing to throw things at the wall and try it. And when they got traction, they were like, okay, we're going to keep doing this. And they stuck with it. Whereas I feel like, you know, Democrats, we like to do things the way that we've done them, and continue to do things the way that we've done them. And I mean, I don't think that's a surprise when the average age of a senator or congressperson is like mid to late 60s, right? So, I do think that the Republican Party has been scrappier. I also think that they have been, to me, more intentional about investing into outreach into young people, or like building infrastructure for younger people. Like, you know, Mike Johnson is the current speaker. He's not very, I mean, he's very young to be a speaker, right? And so I think that they kind of started, and even with Black men, I have done conversations with Black men Republicans. I have close friends who are Republicans who are Black. And what I've heard a lot is, well, They gave me an opportunity. I worked for the Democratic Party. You know, I tried and I couldn't get hired. I couldn't get upward mobility. And so I do think that there's some work that we have to do of being scrappier, one, and two, being more intentional about building our bench and like get off the pot. Like, why are people dying in office at not unexpectedly, but like if you are in your 80s, like why are you still there?
Yeah.
Retire.
You know, and that's interesting. You know, God rest his soul. Sylvester Turner, he just passed away.
Yes.
You know, while in office, and
that was early and unexpected.
It was unexpected. Because to me, I feel like
I'm talking about like Dianne Feinstein, who was like 100 and something. You know, I'm being sarcastic. She was not 100, but she was in her 80s, right? And clear health issues. But Ruth Bader Ginsburg, right? She stayed. She could have, and we talk about it. She could have retired when Obama was president, right? Like the Supreme Court is really, now that is where we're really getting.
I would have probably already had retired personally. I would have retired. Like, hey, you know, she was kind of older lady.
And she was sick. Yes, but we know how the Supreme Court works now. We have the Supreme Court. The reason why student loan debt didn't get canceled was not because President Biden and Vice President Harris didn't try to cancel it. They actually did. The Supreme Court came back and said no. And that's why that's why we all still have student loan debt.
Wow.
Those were Trump appointed justices. They've had a long-term plan, and they were appointing young people as justices. So RBG, you know, could she have retired when Obama was in office? So we had a president to appoint somebody else? Yes, no, but she stayed in and she passed away while Trump was in office. And then now we have this very, very conservative Supreme Court.
Where do you feel we are now moving forward with like Trump? What are you optimistic about with this administration, and what are you pessimistic about? And you can start in any particular order.
Yeah.
Especially as it applies to entrepreneurs too, as well.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah. So I'll start with the pessimistic.
Yeah, we can start there.
Is my hope, is that this will have this has had such an impact on business owners already, that people will really start paying attention again. When, like you said, when people are running for office, read their policy plans on their websites and, you know, like vet it, research it. And a lot of times it's just it's simple. It's like, well, if they're going to impose tariffs, costs are going to go up for everybody. And it's going to hit small businesses the hardest. Under the Biden administration, Black-owned businesses, Black home ownership, I want to say doubled. Still like and Black-owned businesses were booming because they were investing in making sure that minority businesses were getting government contracts and different programs to expand that. Under the Trump administration prior, Black-owned businesses decreased significantly. So that's the type of stuff that you have to pay attention to the data. Just because somebody says, I'm going to be better for your business, I'm better for business people, does not mean that they are. And
that's a good point.
Yeah.
Especially with the whole, DEI. I'm all about like, hey man, like strapping up my own, boots. And, I've been self-employed for a long time, not afraid to work. So I believe in that standpoint, especially like, that's what, the Republicans, their whole standpoint is like, hey, strap up your bootstraps, go to work and cool. I don't really consider myself like one political party or another. Yeah. I just kind of like try to figure out who the best potential candidate is.
As you should, yeah.
But you have to realize some of these programs are necessary. there isn't a like just an absolute, equal playing field. It's just not. So I think it's a great, those programs are great for a lot of African American entrepreneurs to build
Absolutely.
their businesses, and then they were just taken away like it was nothing. You know?
Well, okay, let's use our family as an example. Okay, so a lot of people who are opposed to these particular programs, they inherited wealth from their family, generational wealth. When we look at the black-white wealth gap, right, there is a reason. I don't know, I can't remember what it is today. It might be like 14,000. But I think at least within the past decade, at one point, the black wealth, the average black wealth was like $7,000 per household. This is including assets and all this stuff. White, it was like 140,000. That is a huge gap. But how did we get there? So, there's this amazing book that I love. It's called When Affirmative Action Was White, and it's basically the history of the entire U.S. government. Here is an example from our family. Big Willie went and fought in World War II, right? One of the biggest ways in which white families have acquired, I'm gonna move my phone too. Just because, just because of the shot. Anyways, you can cut it. You got this.
No, we're gonna keep it in.
So
she's a perfectionist. That's good.
But one of the ways in which the black-white wealth gap grew the quickest was the GI Bill. When GIs got back from World War II, when they first passed the GI Bill, a senator from Mississippi intentionally made sure that the ways in which the GI Bill was distributed was regionally, so that the Jim Crow South states like Louisiana could make sure that black veterans didn't get access to that free healthcare, the home loans, all of that. So when Big Willie came back from World War II in 1946, he was not able to access a VA loan, which we know the interest rates, until 1976. That's 30 years.
30 years.
Of equity, of home, of wealth that our family did not get, that we were owed by the federal government because
Correct.
He went and fought in that war. So, no, it's not a handout.
No, yeah, definitely. I mean, because that's a totally different situation because everyone else has access to it. And when you're speaking in terms of real estate, that's a lot of equity. There are so many white families who have benefited from that, that equity that's been built over time, whether it's from being able to take equity out of your home for student loans or to build a business. There's a lot.
But the GI Bill also had they also did loan debt forgiveness, so you could get educated. If you weren't black, if you were a white soldier, you could access going to college. You could access home loans. So yes. it's multiplied and tripled because Big Willie could have also maybe gone to college, right? If he wasn't living in Louisiana, if he came back from World War II and he went to a state where there wasn't segregation, because that's the reason why the only reason that the senators in the South, I guess the Dixiecrats or whatever, I don't know what they were at the time.
The Dixiecrats.
They refused to pass the GI Bill unless the federal government distributed it regionally, so that they could control and make sure that crazy. Black soldiers weren't getting access to those benefits. So, and I'm sure it happened all over the country because
it did. There's a really good book, the Color of Law.
Yeah.
I've read that book a few years back, and that was one of the main parts about that is just how there's been this just wealth gap, because of situations like that in the past, and then realigning all that good stuff, and it's crazy because. I've had these conversations in the past with, not only my family members, even my kids about, trying to strive for more. And, I believed in home ownership. That's why I'm in real estate, and real estate is one of the, the best wealth building vehicle that there is. out there. So it's interesting that you brought that up for sure.
And I've learned a lot from you too about the possibilities, obviously, because of our family background. Not everybody made it out of Leesville, or to like a Houston or a San Antonio. And that's the reason why, I don't know, it was 5 years ago, I bought a condo. My husband was like, why would you do that? We're not going to be in Chicago forever. And because I don't know real estate like you do, but I've seen you all build houses and rent properties and all that. I was like, no, it doesn't matter. Like, this is a way to build wealth. And then whenever we're ready to move to another city, we can rent it out. There's options.
Yeah,
but like,
options.
I'm going to buy something because, and even knowing that the way that I envision a house whenever we have enough money to buy one, I'm like, oh yeah, we could design it and build it from scratch. That's something that he's never conceptualized, but I've seen you do it so many times. So I'm like, yeah, we could do that.
I'm an ideas guy. Like I'm always like just thinking just outside the box about stuff in the cloud. Some people say, but my mind is always just going, and I can just envision there's just so many different ideas that are just always just popping up in my head. So and then with home building, it gave me that outlet to have cool ideas and just create things. And so it's been a great ride, and I'm hoping to do some more cool projects here in the future as well. So tell me, right now you're in Chicago, right?
Yes.
And so how has that been, like being in Chicago, in terms of how were you able to navigate living in Chicago with working on the Harris campaign?
Yeah. Well, the first couple of years that I was working at the DNC, I had an apartment in DC. So I spent a majority of my time in DC. I have not really lived in Chicago I have always been on the road. I have been all over the country, and during those 4 years I went to several states. Like I said, I did listening sessions with people in communities. So I felt equipped. By the time we got to the actual campaign, I was like, well, I've talked to so many people and I have so many contacts in the community, so I kind of know what's going on the ground. But Chicago has been interesting. I mean, I've learned a lot. We had the convention there, which was really, really eye-opening in the ways in which conventions impact the city economy, right? It's $200 million estimated. Influx. People from all over the world. We had diplomats. I met the former foreign minister of Sweden when I was in Berlin last summer doing a talk for this progressive governance summit, and she was like, oh, I'm coming to convention. And I saw her in Chicago that like a few months later.
Wow.
So we had diplomats from all over the world, but also part of what I was really trying to make sure that we focused on was incorporating business owners from Chicago into this big convention. And I hope that every other city does that as well, because sometimes, the big corporations can come in, but making sure that you're bringing in entrepreneurs so they can showcase their work was really important to me. And then, it's a beautiful city, so much culture.
It's a lot of culture there.
Yeah.
So since you're unpacking that part about like what you were doing with the campaign, let's dive into giving back to that little girl who's out there who aspires to, or even a young man who aspires to work in politics in some respect. Like, what exactly was your role with the DNC, and how did it all tie together? Because every time I would try to, I'd call and you'd be like, I'm over here, and I'm like, oh, she got the coolest job in the world. What the hell, So
very stressful, but yes, it was amazing, and I'm really grateful for the experience. So what I would say is come into politics thinking about the change you want to see in the world and the communities, and really which communities you want to advocate for. There are people who come in who just want to build a career and be important. I don't think that's super helpful. But yeah, what is it that you want to see? So for me, I was very clear on who I was. I mean, I was the political director. I started out as the coalition director at the DNC, which is basically working with all of our various constituency organizations, from women to Native to Latino. I mean, and that's what I travel all over the country to go meet with people. So building community and really listening to people, that was my focus. And then I got promoted to political director, which is, I made it my own thing because, as you mentioned, like, we're visionaries. So I was like, we need to be doing this.
Right.
So I wasn't your traditional political director because I did a lot of partnerships with big, like, different cultural, outlets and events. Like, we did a partnership with the Shade Room because I love the Shade Room.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of my peers would have been like, oh, the Shade Room. And I'm like, no, that's where people get a lot of their information. Like, I read the comments. And so
I got it. It's all about the comments.
Yeah. So why wouldn't we be on the Shade Room? But the political director role, I worked with pretty much all of the Democratic elected officials. So whether, it's the Democratic Congressional Committee or Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, I did a little bit of everything. But I think that was part of just who I am and how we hustle, cool. And the work ethic. And, you just keep raising your hand and you keep throwing yourself at, when you see problems, I would try to fill that gap. Whether somebody had done it before or not, it's like, okay, well, people need rides to the polls. People need this thing. And so is there a way that we can get that done for people, or at least make them feel heard?
Right.
So if they want to get into politics, I suggest, looking at internships, looking at different, opportunities, volunteering for a campaign, seeing what it's like. Anything along those lines, so that you can start to understand what it is, what drives you. And you have to know your why. Why am I doing this thing? For me, it was, I don't know, I feel like it was ingrained in me with my mom, my grandma. They were always very civically engaged and active, and they had to be to survive.
Definitely.
And so, I just kind of took that on, and now I am deciding to move into, I really enjoyed that program that I started and moved into with the partnerships with, like, BET and the Shade Room and different athletes and celebrities, where media and advocacy come together about the issues that people care about.
That's amazing. Yeah, I hear that. That's amazing. Yeah. That's really cool. Wow. Yeah, and so the cool thing is, like, you never really had the same day. Like, every day is different. So, that makes it easy to wake up in the morning. You're like, I'm not sure what this day is going to entail. And now you're like going into these, like, super cool things. You were, like you were saying, mentioning the BET, the Shade Room. Just some of the people you've told me you've, like, met has been amazing to hear. Yeah. And I just think it's going to just continue to blossom from here. Really, really cool things. So let's talk about something that I think a lot of people want to know. What was the temperature like in the room post-election? Like the shit hit the fan? What was this? Like, how is that after a loss?
I just went inward. I've been a part of several losses and several wins. So 2016, being in the Javits Center, when we found out that Donald Trump won the election, and that we had lost. I mean, I remember there were all of these little flags that we had gotten for the wavy flags, and once things started to use, there's a certain turn in the night, like when certain states start to come in, and then you start to see the screens. There's always the big screens and the commentators, and they're like, excuse me, and you see you see the red on the screen, and people start to trickle out. And I just remember like sitting on the floor of the Javits Center, and I was just picking up all the little flags.
Wow.
And it was very sad.
It's an emotional experience.
Yeah, so that was 2016. This time around, whew, man, it hit different. I mean, it's a Black woman, you know. And that's another thing I will say is just being like authentic to who you are. Like, I'm a Black woman with locks as the political director for the entire party of the entire Democratic Party, and I did not care, right? Like, that's who I am, and I didn't try to change that for anybody. And I knew that I was going to fight for Vice President Harris no matter what. So, why it hurt so badly was that I knew that the narrative was going to be, oh, America isn't ready for a Black woman. And that is not true.
No, yeah, it's crucial. It's far from the truth. I think it was prime, you know, and we were ready, for sure.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's 2025, you know, I feel like we're in the essence of the future.
Yeah.
Amongst us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think that Kamala Harris was a great candidate. I think that and I knew that it was going to be, oh, Black woman. No, it was campaign. Who ran a scrappier, better campaign? And that is what we have to look at. We cannot, it's not about her identity. Nobody, like Donald Trump certainly didn't have the credentials and all of that stuff, but it's about who was scrappier. And I think that at the end of the day, we have to really take a look at who was scrappier and who fought harder. And we fought, we gave it all we had, but did we listen to people? Did people feel heard? Did people feel activated? So to your question about that night, I knew that I laid it all out on the field because I was gonna fight for this Black woman, but I did not necessarily feel like some of my colleagues who do not look like me understood the gravity of what it meant to lay it all out on the field and be scrappy and not back down from anybody and like, no, we're not doing this business as usual. I don't think they understood the mantle and the scrappiness that you have to have when you have a Black woman on the top of the ticket. Yeah, we raised a whole bunch of money. In a typical race, that would be an indication of potential success. But you have a Black woman at the top of the ticket. So it's not over till the fat lady sings, and you have to fight and you have to have that Black lady's back. And you also have to understand the nuances of what it means to have a Black woman at the top of the ticket. And if you are not a Black person or a Black woman, you don't get it.
Yeah, I understand. You know, I did see there were a lot of women of all ethnicities and colors who did throw themselves behind Kamala, and I just thought it was a definite, interesting and amazing thing to see.
Absolutely.
But you know, one of the things that really stood out about what you just said is that it kind of reminds me of sports. You know, I'm a former athlete.
Yeah.
And you're playing football, you're out there, you're laying it on the line, and you're locking arms with the guy right next to you. The guy to your right and your left, you're going to war with. And that's what you were feeling like, okay, I don't think all of you guys left everything out on the playing field.
Exactly.
You still had some in the tank. And that probably just was like a gut shot to a lot of people who were laying it all out on the line and look around and be like, okay, y'all really didn't give it all y'all had. We could have went that extra mile. Because you mentioned something like that the other day about the buses and getting people out to the polls and stuff. And that type of stuff, you know, I've never worked in politics, but it makes sense. Like, hey, you're trying to win some stuff, like, hey, how can we get these rascals out here to go vote, right? You know, so it's it's definitely interesting.
Yeah, and I think, and that's part of it too, is when we're talking about leaving, and I'll give an example. Post-election, Harvard does a Institute of Politics, like sit down with both presidential campaigns, senior staff. And I think that's the difference too, is there's a difference between people supporting a candidate, and then there's a difference between who is their staff, who is telling this candidate what they do, how they do it every second of every day. And so yes, we had a whole Black women, the 92% showed up. That was not the problem for this election. But who was running these campaigns? And that is the question that the Democratic Party has to ask themselves, is not just who's running them, who has the power to make budget decisions, all that stuff. That's the that's the coaching, that is the locking arms. So back to the Harvard sit down, our campaign said that we ran a flawless campaign. That to me is not a winning attitude or approach. When you lose, you have to be real, and you know this playing sports. You don't walk off a basketball court after you lost and say, yeah, we did everything perfect. And your coach doesn't do that. Your coach will be in your ass, is like, we're looking at the tapes, we're gonna go back, we're gonna dissect everything, and we are going to figure out whether it was a 2-point loss or a 1-point loss. We are going to figure out how next time we will not lose again.
Right.
And we're gonna be scrappier, we're gonna play harder, we're gonna, and that's just something that I think we have to just be real with ourselves about, is why didn't people show up? Because I in terms of turnout, that was our problem. It wasn't that, yes, there was enthusiasm from the Trump side, but it was that a lot of Democratic voters didn't come out to vote. They stayed home. And that to me is the gap that we have to figure out, is how do we play this game better? How do we, and in reality, to me, part of what Trump did was he changed the game. And we're so busy being like, this is how we play. We know how to play. We've won before. And he was like, I'm gonna do this whole other thing over here. And we're just like, so like, oh no, this is how it's done. And it's like, no, if Democrats want to win, we have to change the game. We have to do stuff differently. And we have to like be scrappy and ask for everybody's vote. Black people are not just going to show up for you just because you're a Democrat.
Yeah.
Those days are
Point
over.
Blank, right? It is what it is. So what do you think about where some of the stuff that's going on now? Recently, some of the stuff that they've done with Saudi Arabia, I know that's been Dubai,
I'm not super caught up on that. What's going on?
Well, just the agreements that Dubai has made with the United States in terms of the investing that's going to take place here in the United States. I think the country has pledged like $1 trillion to invest in the United States, and then in return, it feels like that they've green lit this whole Trump hotel in Dubai. So it's a lot of different business stuff going on behind. I see from it's not about politics anymore. It's about business I feel like with the Trump administration, and he's making his money right while he's there. That's kind of what I see.
Yeah. But I think that goes well. So first of all, this is one thing I think that's really important, is that people start to practice what I heard this on a podcast the other day, intellectual humility, in the sense that there are some things that this was an example, that if you don't know the answer, just say you do not know the answer. So I do not know the answer to the Dubai, but I think just kind of overall, because I don't know the intricacies of the deal, like how all of that, I need to research.
I saw like the promo video. It looked amazing. The promo video on the White House put out. Like I said, I really don't get too caught up in politics, but from the real estate aspect of it, development of the new Trump hotel in Dubai is
I have questions,
stuck out to me.
Right? Like I need to read up on I need to read a couple of different sources to understand how that works, given it sounds like a conflict of interest, but I don't know. And what I will say is the big example here is the rich getting richer. That's it. And sometimes I feel like, at least, okay, so I'll give an example. I was talking to a young black man. He was a bartender, and he was like, yeah, I'm like feeling Trump. And I was like, okay, why? And he was like, well, because he's better for business owners. And I was like, okay, great. Do you own a business? And he was like, no, but I want to. And I was like, okay, so, but that's part of it, right? Is like this idealism is like, I don't have $1 million right now, but when I do have $1 million, I don't want to be taxed on it. So I'm gonna vote for the man who is not going to raise the taxes for the top 1% that I am not part of.
You're not part of, exactly. Makes no sense.
And so it's just like, yes, okay, the rich are getting richer, but a lot of us do not fall into that category.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Hold on one second. Let me see. Where's your phone?
Right here.
I'm gonna cut right there
and
splice, but I want to kind of
look at them.
I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, it's fine.
So I said 47. Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. Perfect. It closed on me. That's why. What was the whole
deal? Oh no, you're fine.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna go into MOV strategies. Yep. Travel. Yeah. Okay. Let you finish that. Oh, these are like my pod decks.
No, I love them. I'm just gonna display them.
Have you seen these before?
No, I haven't. How do they work? I was just gonna do this.
Yeah, those are good. So we're all right. We're gonna pick up 3, 2, 1. So the next thing. Let's go into your MOV strategies. And this is a new frontier for you as an entrepreneur.
Yes.
You are on the Entrepreneur podcast.
Yep.
So let's talk about it. And what's your game plan with MOV strategy?
I'm figuring that out. I mean, you have any advice for me? No, I will say I'll give background on how this came about. So MOV stands for Margin of Victory Strategies. And so to me, like this whole concept of us being scrappy and us figuring the way that we lost wasn't some big vast number. It's just being scrappy about these very small percentages, right? So when it came to black men, a lot of us were like, black men we've seen the shifts happening. It doesn't take, the Republican Party doesn't need a majority of black men to come vote for them. They just need a small percentage to get them to that margin of victory. And so to me, I'm all about, movement building, coalition building, and those margins that we can gain from being being innovative and creative and scrappy about how we're doing our work and focusing on the issues that people care about and making sure that people feel seen, heard, supported. And so that's where Move Strategies came from.
I love it. I love it. So that mindset, my oldest son plays 14U baseball, and I always tell Ty to win the pitch. When I used to coach their team, I used to each pitch you win the pitch.
Yeah.
There are so many things that can be unpacked with each individual play. So I used to always tell teammates, one pitch at a time.
Yeah.
Win the pitch.
Yeah.
And that's what matters. And so that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah.
When you're talking about margin of victory, like, hey, you winning each play, one play at a time.
Yeah.
And so that's a really cool concept that you're doing. So is it going to be more so on the consulting side of stuff?
Yes. Okay. Well, so this particular venture for sure, consulting, social impact is really it. Of how do we build coalitions so that our communities can win, right? So I'm not necessarily super focused on politics right now. I'm focused on, so for example, I'm working with a church in Altadena and Pasadena that is supporting people who were impacted by the Eaton fires, who lost everything. One of the largest Black home ownership in the country, 80% of people that live in that area were Black homeowners because it was historically redlined in LA. And so talk about generational wealth that's been just gone.
Amazing.
And so, there's about 20,000 families who are displaced. Some are living in Atlanta, some have moved to Houston, like they're kind of all over, and people have to pay rent, it has been devastating for that community. So all of this to say that we worked with artists and influencers to try to bring awareness. We hosted a benefit concert and resource fair and supported with that. And then when I go to LA this week at the Waymaker conference, which is focused on empowering Black men, the focus is connecting people in their communities with the vast contacts that I have from being all over the country of people who are doing good work, who can support in this time. Because right now, we don't have government resources, so all we have is mutual aid and philanthropy, and who can help us get there. It's going to be the people, it's going to be us. So helping to make sure that people have good strategies around that.
Definitely. So bridging the gap, and connecting the dots for potential candidates is going to be.
Well, no, this is just a church. These are just community people. So this is just all storytelling of the fires. Like, these are people who lost everything. So now we need people to chip in $2, $5 to help support these families that lost everything. So it's really focusing on doing the most good for different communities and figuring out who needs help and making sure that they're connected with the right media, like that we're telling that story. So BET has a fund where they're raising money to give to victims of the fire. And so how do we keep telling that story? How do we keep making sure that families are getting that support? So my clients, it's right now it's mostly been either community organizations or different particular efforts is who I've been supporting and connecting the dots.
Have you seen more people from that fire who are they just making a permanent move, or is it just temporary? What do you?
They're trying to figure it out. I mean, a couple months ago we drove through the neighborhoods, and so it's I mean, there were some houses that are still standing, and then the houses like right to the right and to the left can be completely burned down, and there's still debris there. Not a lot of people have even been able to clear their land off to even begin rebuilding, because that is a whole. I mean, it's going to take.
That's sad. Yeah.
Years for people to recover, and it's very complex, but I don't know if families know. I think there's a lot of families who are just trying to survive each month, because now you've lost everything and you're trying to pay rent, and you're in a different city or whatever it may be. It really is a natural disaster and catastrophe. It's similar to how Katrina impacted people in New Orleans, right? And some of them never did move back to New Orleans.
Yeah. It's kind of like, some of the stuff, me and you were talking about earlier. It's like life kind of just throws you.
Yeah.
Just throws you for a loop sometimes. And then when I look at, some of the stuff that I've been through, it kind of pales in comparison to what these families have gone through. And because there was a family I saw on the news that it was like 3 or 4 generations. They had the same house had been in their family for years and years, and literally lose everything in one fell swoop is just an amazing thing. And the only thing that when a family or someone goes through that, they just have to sit back and say, oh man, God must have just a ultimate plan from this, because I can't really truly understand what's going on. No matter how upset you might be at that time, angry, and all those are valid emotions for anybody to go through. So that's really sad. Definitely, I think that's great work that you all are doing out there to try to help bring more awareness to what's going on. Because although that's happened, it's not over with. The media they leave, and then it's not over with. And that was one of the things that I saw. Even people in Kentucky, they were complaining about like, hey, it's not just about California anymore. We got problems over here as well.
Yes, and it's going to keep happening. And I think that's part of the importance for all of us is that we have to be connected, and we have to build community to get through these different things. I mean, we're fortunate that some of these things have not happened to us, but it could. And how would you want the world, it's already super lonely to go through it yourself, but like you said, once everything dies down, and just making sure that we're trying. I mean, there's so much for us to do, but just trying to help.
It seems like this is gonna right up your alley, just from the experience that you have in managing a national campaign and scaling up something as such as the Harris campaign is going to bring a lot of value to helping these families as well. And so that's a really, really cool.
I hope so. I don't know. Yeah, I'm doing everything I can. Yep. Definitely.
Let's talk about switch gears a little bit. You know what? Let me skip all the way through. Let me go into travel. This is our show. This is my channel. Subscribe. Let me get my plug in. Subscribe to my channel, Global Property Passport. If you have not subscribed yet, our channel is definitely about investing in real estate abroad, and the Texas Migration Guide. If you are looking to move to the Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, Austin area, you're looking to move to the Texas area, our team could definitely help you in real estate. So with the political climate, how do you feel like there's so much we can unpack with everything from immigration to visas. I'll have with me, I've been going back and forth to Colombia, and I've met some people that they're like, hey, their appointment to try to get their visa is like 2 years away. And I've got friends they're afraid of being deported at any given moment, and it's like, and I understand why the government is like, hey, we have to keep America safe. It's a thing, but there are a lot of people who are being unjustly discriminated against as well. So what's been your thoughts? How do you think that, what's your thoughts on all this? I don't even know where to start with this.
Yeah, I mean, so I think the first thing to do is, this goes back to unpacking the data and actually looking at the realities. When we're talking about public safety and crime, at least from what I understand, people who are here working are not that's not the majority of where our crime is coming from. The examples that have been used are very targeted examples.
Yeah.
Like this idea that these people are migrating to our country and coming and murdering young women. It's just, I mean, those examples are few and far between. And I think that we have to really be mindful of the way that we talk about public safety issues and crime, because
people can be discriminated against unfairly, and like you said, there have been situations that have happened not to marginalize any victims that have experienced, their families have experienced that, but there are a lot of people who have migrated here from other countries who are contributing people to our society. And one of the things that while I've been traveling, I worry about the blowback while I'm in some of these other countries, because I love to travel.
That is the fun. Yes.
I mean, I'm a big dude, so for the most part, I always kind of feel somewhat safe, but you never know.
Well, it's so fascinating because when I've traveled to different places in the world, and when I open my mouth and people realize that I'm American, it's a very different reaction. In Australia, I mean, the reaction was so different. But a lot of people do not like Americans right now. However, I will say that one thing, at least that I feel like most other countries understand the Black American situation. That
our plight. Hey, we're gonna give y'all a pass.
Literally.
We see what y'all go through back home.
This one Australian man, he was like, he drove a cab, and he was like, this one white woman from New York got in and was just like, she was saying, it's so terrible what you all have done to the Aboriginals. And he was like, excuse me? We were colonized by Britain. You all, Americans got free and then still went and stole slaves. You all should be ashamed of yourselves.
That's crazy.
But that's the way to think about it. I mean, the Aboriginal situation is absolutely terrible in Australia, and a lot of work needs to be done. But at least the government, I mean, they are making attempts. It's not enough, but they have a whole portion of the government that is dedicated to Aboriginal services, and they did pass some budget for reparations, but it's real complex and all of that. But no, it's people in other countries are not happy with Americans right now.
Wow. Yeah. Australia's on my top of my list to go to next. I'm looking forward to making that trip.
Yes, just be careful. The spiders, the snakes, make sure you do your research.
I might wait a few months. Because I've seen the Facebook posts of the huge spiders and the bats that are the size of Volkswagen.
I didn't see any bats. I didn't see any bats.
No?
Yeah, I didn't even see any snakes, which was rare because, I mean, there were signs that were snakes everywhere. The spiders were huge. Now, the argument that the Australians made to me, because I It was like carrying around a big, like, can of
Can of
bug
rain.
spray. I was shopping and the lady was like, "There's no bugs in here." I was like, "I know, but you know, I just gotta stay ready." Because those roaches were so big. But they were like, "Well, we don't have guns, and nobody has died from an insect or a snake bite in 3 decades because they have all the anti-venom and all of that. So, you know, it's, you know, you're more likely to get killed here."
I can believe that. So
than the insects in Australia is what they put that in perspective for me. I was like, I don't know, that was a big spider. I can't do that. I almost had a heart attack when that thing ran. It was like, anyway.
Yeah, I can't. I don't know. I can't just deal with the insects and the snakes and stuff.
Yeah.
It's you got to be a special individual to deal with that. I'm just not equipped for all that. I'm not gonna lie. I know where I draw my line, but yeah, I still want to go. I'm gonna just stay in the city part, I guess.
Honestly, it doesn't matter. It does not
everywhere.
matter. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm up for an adventure. I can pull it together.
You'll be fine. If I could do it.
Yeah. I can do it. I can do it. No, well, so the interesting part of what you said, you know, I was in Colombia the week before last.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of, you know, Colombians are really trying to get rid of that stigma that Americans have that Colombia is so dangerous. We think about the cartels, the cocaine, and the American media and films have sensationalized that. And people are like, hey, it's not like, this is not everything it's about. And, you know, Cartagena in particular, where I was at, is just an absolutely beautiful place. The culture is amazing. The people are amazing. And I was telling someone, I was like, I feel safer here than driving around Houston at night, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
You know, they're, people drive hundreds of miles an hour, blowing down the freeway here, and it's so much stuff, so many people here in the city. Houston's a beautiful city in itself, but it's not as dangerous. Colombia's not as dangerous as, people make it out to sea. That's just, wanted to let everybody know.
Well, yeah, I think that's the case for most countries. And it's funny because, I had an epiphany when I had to explain to one of my friend's sons in Australia, because he's half American, but he's never been to the US. And we were talking about health insurance, and he didn't know what that was, because in Australia, you don't have to have health. You can go to a doctor, you can get medical care, it's free. And so there's so many different things like that we are so accustomed to that really does improve your quality of life in other countries. And so they look at us and they're like, wow, you have to pay for health insurance, and then they tell you whether or not you can see a doctor or get treatment. You pay all this money, and we can just go to a doctor and get treatment. Like,
wow,
it's part of this culture that we've created that's very isolationist. And this goes back to the migrant, like it all ties into each other of like, if we America block ourselves off from everybody else, we're the greatest, and it's not the reality of the world.
It's not the reality of the world. Definitely, that's a big thing. We do live in. If you don't travel, you never get past the first page. That's what I always say.
Absolutely.
It's a book left unread. So
but a lot of people can't afford to travel right now. So that's the hard part.
Well, you got Spirit Airlines out there, and they'll cut you a deal. So book your flight, go somewhere, try something new. That's definitely.
Did you say Spirit? We are related, but clearly we do not have the same airline preferences.
My preference is definitely, I would say American Airlines first, or Delta.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, it's expensive.
You know,
but Spirit with all the fees and stuff, by the time, I don't know.
What you have to do is you have to be strategic if you're gonna fly Spirit because of, like you say, the fees.
Okay.
That's just for like small trips. So you're just gonna have a backpack, you know, you don't have to carry a lot of stuff. Then do Spirit. Okay. Now they have improved their planes from, you know, I had a layover in Miami, and so my connecting flight was Spirit, and I was just kind of like, screw it, I'll do it. You know, so the plane was improved, the seats were better. Because I remember a few years back, I told myself I would never fly Spirit because I was on a plane and it was like the seats were like bucket seats, like at a ballpark. And you know, when you see tape on the wings, I was like, well, wait a second, that's not a Spirit airline wing. That wing is from somewhere else, you know. So I saw that, you know, a while back, and I told myself I was never gonna fly Spirit again, but my recent one flight on Spirit was not that bad. I was like, okay, this is kind of a cool little thing. They've made some money and they've made some improvements.
Okay. Yeah.
So, hey, that's a shameless plug for Spirit.
Are they a sponsor?
They are not a sponsor, but they can sponsor me some tickets from to somewhere.
They should give you something to give them a shout out because I would not.
You would.
I will never. But they should definitely look. You need to send them this place that she's fine. I'm not endorsed, but I support your
my hustle. Support my hustle. Like, hey, I can take some free tickets.
No, you know? But it is important. It's important to travel and get exposed. And I couldn't be more grateful. I feel so privileged because I hosted, you know, part of this convention stuff, because I hosted different countries when they came to the US to learn about the elections. Then I was invited to Australia to speak to them about the lessons learned from the US elections. And it was absolutely, it was amazing and life-changing, and I'm so grateful.
That's amazing. Yeah. I did see you were in, when you went to Australia. Yeah. And then what other country did you go to? You spoke at?
Well, Berlin.
Berlin, that's right.
Okay. Yes.
And how was that experience being in Berlin? So what was that about?
So it was for the Progressive Governance Summit, which was it was a whole bunch of leaders from all over the world coming together to have discussions about really like progressive policy, from the economy to climate change to labor and even like production. I mean, just brilliant minds. So the Chancellor of Germany actually hosted one of the sessions, and there was, I was on panels with other members of parliament from different European countries. The panel I was on was with Congressman Tim Ryan was on my panel as well, but there was also a German parliament person, and then a top German economist. And so she literally on my panel, she talked about the tariffs. She was like, what Trump is imposing will be bad for the world, and it will make prices rise significantly. Wow. And I was like, wow. Yeah, so it was amazing. Just, a whole bunch of people from all over the world coming together to talk about policies and the future we want to see, what's working in other countries versus what's not. And we did talk about this on our panel as well, the nationalism of how isolationist policy does not help the economy. And in order for us to have a better economy, we have to work with different countries on production and even their ideas and the things that they're doing to advance healthcare and advance all of these things, because the US is, we're really behind when it comes to technology and a lot of definitely. And we've had some discussions here on the podcast about the developments of artificial intelligence, and I definitely know that's something that we cannot fall behind. Yes. We really have to invest in our future, and maybe we've fallen too far behind. Who knows at this point? Because
the advancement in technology is immense. I've seen some technologies that have come out of China and other countries that just like blow away the stuff that we're doing here.
Yeah. Well, so this is where I don't know the answers. I don't know enough about AI, but I did read about the news. I did read the news articles about the significant investments like that the U.S. made into AI, and China invested not as much from what I understand and came out with something significantly better. To me, at least from what I understand, that's a reflection of our education systems being, lagging, because it does seem like, our public education system is really, really, really.
That's a whole nother story that we can definitely dive into. My kids are in public education, and one of the disturbing things that I experienced this year with my oldest son in school is, they'll have 32 kids per one teacher.
Exactly.
And I taught 7th and 8th grade 1 year back in 2002 at a middle school, and I just remember I was like, these kids don't know if they want to be babies or they want to be big kids. And when you have some of the parents who frankly don't give a damn whether their kids are learning or not, and you lump all of these kids in a classroom where you have some kids who do want to learn with some kids who they don't care, their parents don't care, everyone suffers. And especially you have 30-something plus kids per one teacher, it's tough. So the state of Texas has recently, introduced a bill to be able to provide funding for all kids who want to go to private school, right? And I'm not sure where that's at, but I did see something about that, and I'm hoping that maybe that can help. Those.
No.
You say no, it's not going to help.
So we can think about this from an individual level. This is my opinion. I'm not a parent, first of all. So I am sure I do not know what I would do if I was a parent, especially living in Chicago. Like, my husband worked at Chicago Public Schools for 5 years, and I don't know. I don't know if I would be able to send my kid to public school in this current state. I don't know what that is like. But what I will say is, to me, the goal is not to divest from public education, but to invest more into it so that it becomes better, right? So this strategy is a strategy that we have seen before, but it was deployed differently, because everything has unintended consequences for people from marginalized communities, right? And so if we invest in private schools, then private schools get to determine who gets to go to those schools, right? And so therefore, in order for Black and brown kids to even get the funding to go to that school, they have to get accepted into that private school. And that's where it gets into a slippery slope, because we need to have some type of accountability on what these schools look like. It, to me, is a neutral, right? Talk about DEI attempt to resegregate the classroom.
Wow.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, because it's less about, and this is where it gets tricky, because it's like, okay, yes, parents should be able to choose where you want your kids to go to the best schools, right? But what does that entail? Who is holding these schools accountable on who they're accepting, how they're choosing to accept students, and what that looks like? Once you start to privatize that stuff, there isn't accountability.
Yeah.
And even like, Louisiana, 10 Commandments, right? Like it's like, Why does it matter what religion, these are the little things that people put in place, and it seems pretty chill on the surface level, but there's definitely some deeper things that are working to be accomplished that you have to pay attention to. That's what I think about, is how has this been done before in history, and how, and what could it look like?
Yeah. I really started thinking more about all of this, of course, as my kids started to, advance in age. In elementary school, it was something that I really didn't necessarily just unpack. Like, okay, cool, we're there at a good school. And in my mind, I thought about myself and my experiences. I was like, I want them to go to a nice school in a nice area, right?
For sure.
But I wanted them to have that public school social interaction. It's like, hey, I think this is a good environment, good school. I went to a school, I grew up on the east side of Houston, but I went to a high school that was in a low income area in high school. Because they had a magnet program for engineering. So it was a unique situation being at the high school that I went to. And then from there, I went to A&M for college. So it was like the tale of two cities, going from a school that was 98% black to a college that's 98% white. And me being the person I am, I was able to adapt in each environment.
Yeah.
But when I started looking at my children and then the other children, there were a lot of interactions that I had and different events that took place to where I said to myself, I don't think my son would have handled this situation the same way.
Yeah.
I would have. I don't think he would have made this same choice to be like, okay, I don't necessarily need to hang with these particular kids. And the more I started to look at that from a parental perspective, that's when I really started to just dive into what's really going on in these schools, and why do we have 30 plus kids in one classroom? So it bothered me. It never bothered me before until I got to this point.
But you know why, right? Because teachers, especially in the state of Texas, get paid not well. There's a reason why you stop teaching. No, but and that's the importance of teachers unions and things like that, which, Texas is a right to work state. So there's not very strong laws here to protect or even, advocate for higher salaries for teachers. But when you look at other countries that have really strong public education systems, teachers are paid well, right? There's investment into creating a strong curriculum so that when you, the goal is to make sure that every single school has a lower pupil to teacher ratio, right? The goal is to make sure that there is a challenging and progressive curriculum that sets kids up for success at every single school. We as America can afford that. There's no reason why and so to me, I guess, yes, no, you're right. We should not have that ratio of teachers to students should not be that low. But I mean, a lot of people, I don't know that we support our teachers. Teachers have to pay out of their own pocket to get kids school supplies. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It is what it is. So before we break and run, let's tell everybody, how do they get in contact with you? How do they book you?
Yeah.
And y'all know how to get at me, but let's go into it.
So you can go to my website to learn more about me and the different services that our company provides at www.brenciaberry.com. And then if you want to email, you can email us at info@mcberry.com. movstrategies.com.
info@movstrategies.com, right?
Yes.
All right. And I'm going to put the link in the description below.
Awesome.
So you'll be able to click on the link to, book her for any type of consulting, political strategy, motivational speaking.
Yeah, event production. I produce things. Yeah, a little bit of everything. Comms as well. I do a lot of media.
Comms. She's been in the front lines with everyone from Obama, Hillary Clinton to, just amazing stuff. So definitely reach out to her, and thank you guys for once again.
Yes.
So checking out our podcast, and hit the link below, subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it. This is Will Garner with Global Property Passport. I'm happy to have you guys. God bless you and good night.
Thank you.